Hi, welcome to the Connected Factory podcast. With me today are Brian and Trent, both system integrators, and we're going to talk about data ops, open source, interoperability, and also take a little bit of sneak peek into what they have been preparing for the upcoming ProveIt Conference. So maybe to get started, Trent, could you say some words about you? So you're founder at 4.0 Hero LLC. How would you say is your role?
My background is about 21 years worth of industrial automation, where I started as a system integrator, everything from technician to engineer. And then I spent time doing controls engineering, where I was doing programming and focused on integration for a machine builder. And then I moved on to a larger manufacturer of electronics, automation electronics, and I worked there for 6 years as an engineer. And I decided I wanted to try to see if I could branch out and to try to help in a more specific way. So for the 4.0 type solutions, IoT, it's just a personal interest of mine. So I decided I wanted to branch out and see if I could turn it into my career as well. So I started 4.0 Hero not long ago, and my focus really is going to be on edge data solutions. So really just focused on things that are close to the factory floor and working my way upward. And whereas many of the people that are tackling these solutions are started from the top down, I'm going to try to see if I can go from floor up.
And Brian, what is your role and how did you meet Trent?
Yeah, so I started my company, Mach Controls, as a systems integrator, providing the technologies, services, and solutions that manufacturers need to get up to speed with their operations. We've been in this space for quite a while, starting all the way back in 2020. And I got in touch with Trent not too long ago, probably beginning of spring, I want to say. And ever since then, we've always just been bouncing ideas when it came to things with 4.0 solutions in the community. We've always kind of been around each other. And since then, we've always kind of been talking about what could we do. And then when it came to the ProveIt Conference, we decided to partner with each other, with Mach leading it and with having Trent come on board for helping out with presentation and the demo itself.
Just a couple of days ago, I already talked with Matthew Paris, and he said also something similar that he started in this in the year 2020. So we did a podcast, but for the listeners, it will be likely going to be released after this podcast. So even though we recorded it I recorded Matthew before, he is going to be released afterwards. And he said that he stumbled into the topic of Unified Namespace also around 2020. So what was your journeys there? How did you land up with the Unified Namespace in the community?
Yeah. So I think like everybody else, we kind of discovered it on YouTube. We're like always scrolling for the new thing that's going on. What are other people doing? And Walker posting a ton of videos about a unified namespace. That got us interested. And what we saw with the unified namespace and what it allowed a lot of manufacturers to be able to do is to actually start tracking the performance of what's actually happening on the plant floor. So if you're talking about just what's available for manufacturers right now to solve their own problems, they have a really hard time to be able to collect data, be able to analyze what's happening, what did happen, and in context to the actual business. The problem is that there really hasn't been a very easy means to do so. You have 200 plus protocols that could end up on any plant floor at one given time, and being able to get data from it, even for what's available, most of the data that does come out doesn't make sense. So what a unified namespace really allowed a lot of manufacturers, at least for the vision that we saw, was to be able to have visibility about what's actually happening on the plant floor and just being able to see the current state of what's happening in context to the business.
And you are now a moderator of the Discord. I think I never asked you.
I know. I'm officially a Discord mod. And now I've been bestowed the power of Discord mod so that they have a quicker response time for kicking out all the spammers. That's as far as my powers go for the Discord. But I am the co-lead advisor for the 4.0 community. It's been a great experience. It's been a great time at helping out the community too, where I can. And hoping to do a lot more this year, especially after ProveIt. ProveIt's taken up a little bit of time.
Trent, how did you, as far as I understood, you only met each other like a year ago. How did you land it up in the topic of unified namespace, and and all of that?
Yeah, probably about, I want to say about 5 years ago, something like that, around 2020. It seems like that seems like a common year for everybody to get exposed to these topics. I believe, so just going a little bit back before that time, with my time as a machine builder, we always had requests from customers when we would deliver equipment where they would say, can you go ahead and plug that into our infrastructure and go ahead and just integrate with our business system and give us some data? And I'm just like, well, can you give us all the data? There's always, questions of, can you integrate your piece of equipment with our business? And we tended to shy away from that. I think it was because we were a little scared of the unknown, probably a little bit afraid of some of the technology was not really in our wheelhouse. And then also, when you are building a machine, you build it on maybe your own facility floor, and then you deliver it to the customer, so you don't have any testing that is done. So with that perspective of seeing how machine builder tendencies were to pass that responsibility off on the customer, the end user, I kind of drew an interest into, there's got to be a better way. So I was like, okay, what is that better way? So one of those interests, personal interest and professional interests, led me into searching things on Google, looking on YouTube, and I came across things like MQTT. And at some point in time, I believe I had a coworker that said, hey, did you see this video? And it was Walker Reynolds that was talking about Unified Namespace and talking about,
or renting.
Well, yeah, but it was, it was really my introduction into the space of, there is a better way. There is a way that you can do it. Someone has found the way, and you just need to kind of learn some of the topics and the technologies and the application. And then you can start to bring that a little closer to reality. So that was kind of my introduction into this space, the 4.0 solutions community. And as I've been there for the last 5 years, I have done mentorship, and now I'm mastermind. And in that journey, I've met many different people in the Discord. And one of those people was Brian, that Brian just kept popping up. He's very active in the community, so he'd pop up very frequently. So that's when we would bounce things back and forth in the Discord before we were ever friends in Discord. So that was just kind of like, we became aware of each other through the community. And then eventually.
It's all, I think for both of you, you have not been working your own company for a long time. I think you're both just getting started. Is that correct? Okay. So what made you the move to start a new company just to focus on it?
I'll answer that real quick before Brian gets a chance to. But I just started in December. So I'm very new to this area of starting my business here, but I really saw an opportunity to be able to focus in this area versus my previous roles were very focused in controls, developing the controls platforms, developing the piece of equipment and the automation. I just saw a gaping hole between controls engineering technologies and the knowledge and the skill set that's required there, and a separation in IT. So the IT technologies were kind of just a mystery for most controls engineers. So I really drew an interest into learning more about those. So databases and SQL, and learning OPC-UA and MQTT, which have mostly come from the 4.0 solutions community. But just seeing the opportunity to be able to help bridge that gap between and try to bring that technology closer together was really what I saw. It drew an interest, but then also I see that, industry really needs it for sure.
Yeah, it's fine. For me, Trent started in December. I've started in March of 2021. So we're coming up to 4 years now for running the business. And I will say it's been quite the experience on it. And the business has changed over time from what we've intended it to be to where it currently is now. I'd imagine it's the same story with United Manufacturing Hub too. So you guys, we started as a systems integrator too. We wanted to speed up the process it took to get from a sales quotation all the way down to a finished product. But that was our main goal with it. But as myself, as I was developing the business and looking for where the next industry trend is where are the next problems, where are people going to be running into the next roadblock. The biggest issue, obviously, when it came to it, is manufacturers and their data and technology. It was very surprising to me coming into the industry that we spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on brand new equipment, yet we don't take any of that information that gets generated and save it anywhere. And we do this for the majority of the machines that exist out there. So it was always very baffling to me that we really never had a very good grasp over our data in the manufacturing realm. And it was, and now being in the industry and going through the mentorship, going through Mastermind, being part of the community, talking with everybody and going to tons of manufacturing plants too, and trying to help them with their data. It really is a very big, ugly problem. A lot of it does come down to how long it takes and how many softwares it takes to get one data point to whichever service you really need. And it has been very surprising. One of the surprising facts that came up, I think it was during Tulip's operational call, and it was with Sesame, and the CEO during his talk mentioned that it would take 6 vendor license, 3,000 lines of code to get one data point from the sensor to the PLC to SCADA to MES to finally land into the ERP system somewhere. And if you're talking about into an integration for multiple machines with thousands, tens of thousands of data points, that's just not practical. So there's got to be a better way for doing it. And that's where Mach's really been going down that path of trying to make it easier for businesses and manufacturers to actually collect data from their machines and use it properly and being able to use it how they need it.
So you would say you have a lot of experience in doing just that, going to production facilities, doing both of you doing all the control systems. So you both started from the.
We started from the ground up, both of us. You should hear the hour-long conversations we have about wiring panels. It's dry, but it's great. So we come up from the ground floor on wiring this, and we're just getting started on what data means, what the technology means, and databases, historians, and connecting all the data sources together into a more cohesive picture. I think as a manufacturing industry, the OT and for systems integrators, we're just now getting up to speed with the data and the technology. So it's a bit of a bridging point, I think, in history that we're at right now. We're trying to move forward.
How did you now land it up with UM8? How did you get to know us?
So I think what really caught my attention, I think the most on it, was in the community Discord. I think it was either you or Alex. I think it was you. You made a fairly public post that you guys were going all in on the unified namespace concept, and you were going to commit to the concept and that you were going to bring the best product to the market for it. And that itself was enough for me to keep you guys on the radar and investigate further on why UMH, why this stack, what are they providing, and everything about it. So then I just dove in, and I'm very impressed. Every avenue you turn onto where you should start. Let's even start with just the high availability and the technologies that you guys are using. I mean, most of the time now, services in the cloud, they're using Kubernetes, they're using high availability Docker orchestration management systems. And we are not seeing any of that anywhere close to the manufacturing area. But all that is happening in IT, how can we bring that down to the OT level? You guys decided to go in the direction with K3S, which is a lot more performant edge operating, well, not operating system, cloud management system for edge devices. That was already a good start, just even with that technology. Then let's look into every other aspect, okay? You have the broker, you go with HiveMQ. It's a good community one, but it has a really good ability to scale for an enterprise. And let's be, yeah, exactly. Oh, I gotta get that sticker.
Yeah, so for the listeners who are only listening here and not seeing the video, I'm pointing here on the how you call it, Shiny. It's Shiny, right?
Yeah.
On the Shiny -QB that I have here on my.
You guys are going to have to send a lot more stickers over. Yeah.
So you should be getting this one here for the ProveIt Conference, the OPC in the trash bin one, because people have been asking for it. But then also here the Unified Namespace, or the, I'm showing it, there's like a UNS sticker.
Yeah.
There's like, we support open source. Then there's our mascot, we call it Otto, long story. It's a llama, and then also UMH logo, all on the stickers. You should receive a packet with all of them pretty soon for the ProveIt.
And then soon everybody that's going to ProveIt will have it too.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I did want to continue on with the stack. So I mean, yeah, every direction you guys have gone with it has just been phenomenal. And then let's talk about like history with the Unified Namespace. And this has always been like a hot topic on what to do about history with the Unified Namespace, because Unified Namespace, we're always synonymizing it with the MQTT broker and to represent the current state. But now we have to deal with, what is history? How do you store history? How do you then query history? How do you represent that in the namespace? And I think this is definitely where the architecture does come in. And with the traditional approach of what we use to show to the community what a unified namespace architecture is like the Ming stack, right? So, what is it? MQTT or Mosquito, Influx, and Node-RED and Grafana. So with Influx and Ming, like, you're just historizing all the different topics and you're saving that as your history, but there's still a lot more that you have to do to get out of it. So, like, you're going to have to build up pipelines dedicated to query the database for it, if there isn't an API built onto it. And you're going to have to maintain that availability of that historian to be able to query all of the time. And when you're talking about history and you're talking about a universal source for your history, it's going to be a pretty bad database. It's not going to be, because when you have a database, you have it dedicated for a specific service. You have it dedicated for doing a specific task. They do very well with it. But if you put a database into a more general, broad stroke task of being a historian, being a service, being a cache, it's not going to do very well in every single one of those regards. But what you've done differently with UMH compared to Ming is that instead of saving the topics to the historian, instead you're bridging it directly with a Kafka broker. Now that is a game changer. And I say that because now you're able to bridge the current state with what's happening with all of the events that have ever happened in the business. That's very powerful, because now at that point, you can derive past services. So you have an API, you want to dedicate it for your MES that you're building, right? Mm-hmm. You can build a dedicated database for that with a dedicated API for it, but you're going to have a very hard time rescuing the data or sourcing the data if you're just storing it directly to the database, and you now need to throw that somewhere else. The benefit with Kafka is that you get all of the events that have happened in the context that they've happened, and regardless of the schema that it's representing, you now get all of the events. And from there, you can build out, have that source of data, then pipe into whatever schema for the database that you need it to be in. That's very powerful in my opinion, because now you get the events that have happened, all of the events, in whatever schema they are, and then you can define exactly what schema you want and connect the two together. So you really get the best of both worlds of, you have a really good high performance database where you can get a lot of more historic trends. You can build an MES on top of, but you can also save every event that has ever happened, regardless of the schema that's in the database, the schema that's in the machines, or what have you. So in regards to like why UMH, why do we want to go with UMH? And it's because they really, in our opinion, they've built one of the best architectures, and they've done it with some of the best open source softwares that's available. I could keep talking on for hours. There are so many things that we could dive into on UMH and why I think it's really good architecture. But when we but I'll at least give like the examples of like history. That tends to be a very popular.
Maybe to give their background, I think maybe we already talked about it, but like the reason why we built the system as we've built it is because we started as a system integrator. Like we were there and we're basically doing exactly what you are proposing. Like companies, hey, let's take production machines and connect it. We were also like, hey, we didn't want to manage like 6 different vendor licenses, which is something that's impossible as a small system integrator. Like you can't do it. You just want to get stuff done, show an OEE, whatever. And then we start with the Ming stack with exactly that, because at one point we were like, what? Like, how could this be so complicated here? Like, why do I have to pay a couple of millions when I get all of this? Like, my father is an electrical engineer, and he has just with Node-RED and MQTT, he's digitized his entire home, like running on his Raspberry Pi. He's doing it in his free time. He also cannot program, but he was doing it. And I was like, why can't you do it?
Why can't you do this in the manufacturing floor? You know, we can do this in the hobby. We could do it as a hobby in our own homes, but we can't do it on our own plant floors.
Yes,
without spending millions of dollars in licenses.
Yeah, and that was the starting point for the Ming stack. And then over time, we realized, hey, we need to switch out some components. Mosquito is now HiveMQ. Node-RED is still still important part, but it's extended with like Bentos. There is Grafana, which is still in, and InfluxDB, we switched out for TimescaleDB. And then there's the Kafka part, where I'm actually writing currently an article about it, but I don't think we have time too much here to talk about it. I'm writing an article like advantages and disadvantages of MQTT. I think I'm calling the article, What is MQTT? Why most explanations suck, in our attempt at fixing them. We really go into what the protocol is and how it compares to databases and everything around it, then where it really excels at, but then also take a look, what are the other options there? So to really find out what is really the sweet spot of MQTT, but then to understand because just a small teaser, maybe for the listeners and maybe for you, I will probably send it to you for feedback. Anyway, the main advantage of MQTT is its low overhead. Like, it is very lightweight, and exactly that advantage is also its disadvantage, because the manufacturing networks, everything is like, I mean, it's cable connected anyway. You're not really having low power connection. Everything's connected via electricity. You have cable networks, but you want to have features like what you said, like, hey, you want to have like a history of things, and MQTT is not. Yeah. It's simply not
very good. It's not very good with it. Now, it does good with like low bits of information. It does great with low bits of information. It's just a very big problem when you're really talking about streaming, batching, and more things related to other data processes. You know, that's kind of the downfalls with MQTT. With it, like transactions being one example, you're going to have a really hard time with transactions in an MQTT broker, because even the mechanisms that underpin like a REST API call, none of those mechanisms are built into like the MQTT broker. It's just whatever you define for it. You need to build out on top of it more of those procedures for communication for a transaction before you even talk about the data that you're wanting to transact.
Yeah. This is what we were then calling application protocols, and you need them always. Doesn't matter on the protocol, but yeah, you're always going to need it. If you really want to ensure that you can safely write to PLCs, you're going to always need to define something over protocol. But also, just to tease a little bit, MQTT has a maximum theoretical limit of 65,000 messages that can be in flight at any given time, which means if you have a typical, and I think we're going to see that also later, like a typical bridging setup where you have like edge devices that are then bridged with a client-side MQTT broker or unified namespace. Mm-hmm. And if you disrupt the connection there, imagine you have 1,000 messages per second, and you disrupt the connection. Based on the quality of service, it can maximum hold and like 2 bytes, so 65,000 and something messages in there before it will start dropping. And in reality, it will already start dropping way earlier messages. We did a lot of tests, like I think 3-4 years ago, when we were still a system integrator, thinking about like bridging solutions and how we can do it. And we always had a lot of message loss. And now I finally found the really reason for it. MQTT is not really designed for this multi-bridging setup. It's
meant to be a message broker for devices. It's not meant to be.
It's designed to be message broker for low bandwidth scenarios.
Yeah, low bandwidth, and probably, I mean, I know you can pass a lot of packets, right? It's proven its capability to pass a lot of packets, but what you're saying is that it wasn't really designed to have high throughput, right?
Exactly. So it's not designed to have a high throughput through the same connection. So it has an overhead of 2 bytes. Now I really going into the details, but I think it's just interesting.
Keep talking about it. I'm learning more on this, honestly.
Yeah. You have every message. If you have a quality of service higher than 0 is just fire and forget. If you have a higher quality of service than 0, you're going to have a message overhead of 2 bytes. And those 2 bytes, you can maximum put messages in there. So if you're sending with quality of service 1s, you can have maximum 65,000 messages that are currently in transit because they need to be acknowledged. And in reality, it's even earlier. Like I looked into the -q documentation, and it's like only 1,000 messages or something, which is perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. Perfectly fine if you have a car that's sending telemetry data, which is perfectly fine for an oil pipeline. It's like that. You have 5,000 sensors across 200, 300 miles, kilometers, whatever, sending 1 data point per second. Like it's perfectly fine like this. But especially in those bridging scenarios, it really starts to, when you have high throughput, you can't guarantee it. Like the server needs to keep track of what has been acknowledged or not for the subscribers. The publisher needs to do it. Of course, you could now go for a very well implemented communication there with application protocols, etc. on it. But that's like one of the reasons why you can have like why we always experience some message loss in those scenarios. Like you can do only one thing, either send a lot of fire and forget messages, doesn't matter, or send a couple of really important messages. Like you have a car, you open, I think that was an example from -q, like you open key knob is an English term, you press it and the car opens via cloud, whatever. You're going to send one message every couple of hours. Or maybe if there's children playing with your key knob, it's going to be more than that, but not thousands per second.
Right. Like it's an IoT protocol. You got to put it into perspective for what that means is that it's a small thing that needs a little bit of internet connection to send a couple of points of data.
Exactly. And it's not, it was just never designed. I talked with a former technical committee member of MQTT, and he explained it to me, like its strength is also its weakness. And I'm going at great length about that in the article, talking about everything, like all the advantages. One advantage of MQTT is everyone can use it. I mean, you have probably tried to interact directly with Kafka.
That's a couple of evenings of being just staring at a computer screen, and it's not the funnest.
Also same for other message brokers, even NATS or AMQP. Kafka is like what complexity, it's on the upper level. It's also called like a dump message broker. So you need a smart client.
Yep.
Yeah, with MQTT, it's all the way around. It's you have a smart broker, but the dump client. So it's really good that everyone can just send data there, but it has its limitations. And it's something I always like to talk about, and something I'm doing in all of my articles, and where really my heart lies. It's all about trade-offs and really understanding a technology and then deciding what to do with it. Because I'm seeing also a lot of proposals to change the MQTT standard or whatever. Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be much progress in that realm. I really don't think so. And to your point, you're absolutely right. And a lot of this is not one is better than the other. It's always trade-offs on what you're trying to do. And you have to build out the architecture to facilitate the needs that you're looking for. MQTT provides a lot of capabilities for devices to connect. If you're looking at a manufacturing plant floor and you're talking about what the ultimate SCADA would be, it would be having a MQTT broker somewhere in there to be able to connect every device, no matter what it is, whether a light bulb or your multi-million-dollar press. That's the advantage with MQTT. But again, like you mentioned, it's not meant anywhere past level 2. It's going to have a really hard time with providing a lot more of the data, various types of data, and that's where your infrastructure does come in. So you brought up the point of the downsides of using MQTT and the common pitfalls. Now, how is UMH actually able to solve those problems? And I think with your Kafka and Benthos, that's really the solution for it. But I'll let you take over.
Yeah. So our take is you are still going to need MQTT. It's so simple. You can easily also program it into PLCs. I mean, in reality, what you're going to do, you have some PLCs that speak Modbus. We talked about great length already about Ethernet IP. You have those, and then you will not reprogram them to speak with MQTT. This is something I often also think that people criticize about this whole unified namespace thing. I don't reprogram all my PLCs. This is also not what you should do. You typically use a protocol converter. Like, it doesn't matter if it's UMH or anyone else. Like, everyone is doing it like this. Use a protocol converter. We use Benthos, but then there's also Kepware. There are also other vendors there. It's always normal that take this and then convert it to MQTT. And how we solve it is we combine it together with MQTT. So there's MQTT, and you can really easily interact with it. So if you're working with Node-RED, then we connect to MQTT with the whole purpose of being, hey, someone can really easily create stuff. But then the core backbone of it is Kafka, or specifically Red Panda, because Kafka is very, very heavy, and not only in its architecture, but also in its implementation. It's designed for something else. So Red Panda is a single binary, easy to run, etc. So we're directly ingesting it there. And we are providing like the glue between all of those.
I love that you guys picked Benthos. I love that you guys picked Benthos, because the more that I go into and the more I go into the documentation, the better it kind of gets.
Yeah. So
Really
Benthos is really great. Like, we discovered it on accident because we were searching for something. Hey, I mean, what do you want to do? You don't want to program code. You just want to configure something. There's also big things. UMH, you don't program, you always configure. You don't need to be a programmer, but you need to configure things. And with it, it's really easy. It takes care of a lot of the hidden issues, like guarantees. So for example, with Benthos, you don't need to think about, you take data from Kafka, you process it and push it back. It will do all the commit logic in the background automatically. You don't need to worry about it.
And this is the downside of the quality of service, QoS. And let's be honest, once you get, like, you only need QoS of 1 at most, in my opinion, when it comes to it. Because when you're talking about QO2, that means you only send it once and you only get a guarantee that it was delivered at least once. And when you're talking about what is it that data is doing, you don't care that it gets delivered. That's not the point of it. You care that it gets processed. There's a very big difference between the two, because you could send the letter in to the broker, that broker will send it to the application, but that does not guarantee that the application is going to process that data point at all. There's no guarantee in MQTT. There's not. So with Benthos, what you're able to do is you can separate between what you want your pipelines to be specifically doing. So you could have a pipeline dedicated for just posting directly to the broker. No problem with that. Protocol converter, right? But you can also have another Benthos config that's going to look through those namespaces. And when it picks up a namespace, it can process that namespace and it'll give you a guarantee. So once that data goes in, there will always be a guarantee that that gets processed. If it doesn't get processed, it gets thrown back into that stack and reprocessed. We don't really care too much about the timing of the data. You know how, like, there's been TSN and that sort of thing. There was a big
time-sensitive networking.
Yeah. There was a massive push for TSN, for going higher past like level 2. And it's a very good technology. Don't get me wrong, but there's no point. The only thing that you really kind of care about is that you get the data processed. You don't care about, it's nice to get it on time and having the timing right. But when we're talking about data, the only things you really care about is just the processing side of things. But to get back to the topic, with using Benthos and in this setup, is that you can give a guarantee that your applications are going to process the data as they come in. You're going to be able to have a lot more stable of a architecture and a lot more stable data deliveries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still the MQTT limitations in it, but Bentos will take care of most of the stuff that you don't want to do again and again.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to highlight some of the things we've been discussing so far is from my perspective. So dealing with controls networks, there's a certain level of determinism and high speed there that you just don't get out of some of the higher level IT networks. But it's required for control. So when I came from that area of always getting updates, at some known frequency or generally known frequency at high rates, when I moved into trying to understand more event-based communication like MQTT, it can be cyclic, but it's not deterministic. So you don't really know for sure exactly what the timing is going to be from one point to another. But that wasn't as important to me, but it did take me a little while to grasp the idea, just dealing with it. But what I think is important about MQTT that we've been discussing up to this point is accessibility. So you brought up that it's easy to work with because the broker is smart and the client does not have to be. And that was something that came to me really quickly, is that once I understood how to connect and that I had the flexibility to put any data I wanted into MQTT, that opened up a whole new world to me. That combined with the cloud cards that you can use for topic subscriptions, those are totally new concepts to me. But as soon as I grasped them, I was like, okay, this right here is sweet. But I understand that the limitations that you're bringing up with MQTT and how UMH is combining MQTT and Kafka and bridging those two things together to try to get some of the benefits of both, trying to keep that usability very accessible from many devices as clients, and then also users, right? Users that are developing and creating these solutions to be able to integrate with MQTT is much easier than Kafka. And that might depend on perspective, but coming from controls background, understanding a lot of these IT protocols, sometimes, it's very different. So having the ease of use with MQTT is definitely something that I really saw as valuable. So that's the value that I actually think that UMH really has. You guys are promoting open source technology and combining it all together, but you're grabbing the best pieces that typically might be challenging for someone like myself to be able to build and integrate all of these technologies, but yet through UMH, I have the ability to interact with it in ways I'm familiar with, but gain the benefits of the back-end data infrastructure that UMH has been developing. So that's where one of the huge values I see in UMH is combining the things like Bentos and Kafka and bridging MQTT to that so that we can get it into a database, timescale. And that's something that, while I'm going to say that most controls engineers don't have a lot of experience with, at least in my observation, I think that because it's open and it's relatively common, being able to deal with a database is something that is accessible to anybody to learn that has some technical capability. So my key points of entry to UMH really have been MQTT, being able to do the protocol converters so I can connect to the external world, right, devices, and then being able to use Node-RED as extension and a little bit of coding, and then being able to access the database. But everything in between that, like you mentioned, is the glue. I think that that's really the huge value with UMH, is the glue of bringing all those things together so that they can work in harmony.
All right. So, Trent, so you have been explaining a little bit why you chose MQTT and the UMH, but you're also preparing now a booth for the ProveIt Conference together with Brian. So what is it that you want to show there? What is it that you're offering your customers there?
Right. Yeah. Right. So I think I'll lead on the overhead on what we're going to be providing for the ProveIt Conference. So what we see in the market right now, and the big issue with the Unified Namespace and the whole concept, is that it takes a lot of money and a lot of time for people just to get started. Even for, like, when you guys went to start even with deploying a main stack, I can imagine the amount of hours, the amount of time, the amount of personnel it required just to get it instantiated. Now let's put that into the perspective for a manufacturer. how many IT people, how many engineers do you think it takes for instantiating one instance of a main stack so that you could start doing a proof of concept for your business and making a case to then connect all the rest of the business to it. So what we find is like, it takes about like between like 5 and 10 IT engineers and a ton of money and a ton of time, like 12 to 18 weeks and 35 to 50K just to get a proof of concept infrastructure in place and getting one machine connected. Now, that does include like, putting in the infrastructure, getting the resources allocated, getting the engineers in place, getting the machines connected, getting the devices that needed to connect the machines. When you take that into scope, or at 35, 12 weeks, not a bad time frame. But when we try to put this in perspective of how can we get this in the hands of every manufacturer doesn't have 10 or 5 IT people to instantiate. They don't have 12 weeks, and they certainly don't get 35 to 50K to spend on a proof of concept to show that it works. So what we want to do for the proof of conference is to provide a solution for manufacturers to get started. We want people to have a proof of concept where they could start for one of their machines and they could prove it to their boss, to whoever, to show that it works. And that's pretty much what our premise is going to be with it, is that we want manufacturers to be able to show that A, the unified namespace architecture works, B, that united manufacturing works, and C, that with Mach Control's help and with our services, we can give it to you a way more affordable cost a lot quicker. So that's what we're looking to provide at the conference. And our whole premise on it is that we want to give you the tools and the resources you need to get started. You're going to know your machines a lot better than I do. But we're going to be able to give you the solution for you to be able to solve your own problem. Because at the end of the day, do you really want a systems integrator for the next 10 years programming out your machinery, building out your whole data infrastructure? Or do you want your team to be building it out? Do you want your people to know the infrastructure? Do you want your people to use it? We would love to get everybody started. We know that at least for the majority of the industry, small, medium manufacturers may have a hard time billing our hours to them. I mean, you can imagine just how many hours we can accrue just building out these types of infrastructures. And when we're talking about a proof of concept, just to prove the value of it, it's too expensive for many manufacturers. So we want to get people started. And that's our whole premise, is that we just want to get people started with being able to track what's happening on their plant floor, being able to connect to their machines, and be able to see what's actually happening. And that is really where we see a lot of benefit with starting with UNH and then scaling with UNH. So we can give you the infrastructure and the assets and the hardware you need to get started so that you can prove to whatever key stakeholders are the value of the data. A lot of people seem to forget about the value of the data, especially from the manufacturers, yet they throw tons of their own money into like AWS and NVIDIA, who run their whole business off of data. It's a little ironic in that case, but we really want to just get people started with it and be able to show the proof that it's a very, very powerful tool that you really need to have on your plant floor.
Anything you want to add, Trent?
I mean, along the same lines of what he's talking about bigger scope. And I'm very focused on the edge type connectivity. So connectivity has really been my focus in this area. So because I'm very familiar with controls and devices, and I think that without having connectivity to your piece of equipment, to the sensors, to the devices, then it's going to be extremely difficult to automate this. I think that's really one of the challenges that many manufacturers face, is really just trying to gain connectivity to their equipment. So that's really been one of my focuses in this area.
Yeah, and then to tie it with the ProveIt Conference and the demo, we'll be bringing 3 edge devices hooked up to 3 panels, and we'll be able to connect to various different vendors to show what connecting to them looks like, giving them the opportunity to do it themselves, but we'll be able to show what it looks like and what you'll be capable of doing with the actual devices on hand that you could see.
You will be showcasing 3 different edge devices, and you will showing the UMH. Is there any specific sneak peek you want to give us or to give the listeners on why they should visit or what they can expect at your booth?
Well, there is going to be tons of stickers, if that's one thing. Stickers don't get you, and I don't know what else will. So really, some of the biggest reasons why you'll really want to be coming to the booth is what we can show you, what you can do yourself. We want to give people the opportunity to also try UMH before they even try to implement it or buy the equipment, because they still have to buy hardware. They still have to program it. They still have to get it set up. We would love to approve it to just get it ready for you to try. Already set up. The devices are there, connected to IPs. Everything's ready. The on-premise UMH server is ready. All you have to do is connect it and give it a try yourself, and you can see the value of it.
So is there anything that you would like to add or that you would to highlight? So if someone is a manufacturing company in the US, in your region, how would they be able to contact you, or where would they find you on the ProveIt conference?
Yeah, so if you want to reach me, you can either reach me on LinkedIn. You can reach me email at bpribe@machcontrols.com. You can also find me on the Discord. I tend to be on there quite often.
Yep. And myself, you can visit my website, 40hero.com, or you can email me at trent@40hero.com. And if you guys want to come visit us at ProveIt Conference, what booth number was it, Brian?
18,
I think it was like
18, top left.
Yep. So we're all the way in the back room, top left of the map that we've seen. And then you can come visit us there and we can have a chat, just see how things are going for you.
Yeah. So if you're in the US and you're a small and medium manufacturer and you're interested in the UMH, definitely go check out their booth. We're in close contact with Brian and Trent to set up the entire booth and to present UMH as best as possible. And if you're in Europe and you can't make it to the ProveIt conference, what you can do is we will be in the next month, we will be on Hannover Messe on booth G66 in Hall 15. So basically where you find also all the other vendors. So if you're in Europe and interested, you can also visit us at UMH directly there. So thank you, Brian and Trent, for your time and all your knowledge that you provided. Listeners, I will put the notes from Trent and Brian in the description. So their LinkedIn, probably not the email, so that you don't get spammed by bots if we put it on the internet. But we're going to put the link in there. You already heard the email. We're going to put the websites there where you can contact them directly, and see you next time.